life size. Albert.
Oh, Sophia, nice to meet you. So I guess you can sit right here. Yeah, just 1 second. The composer with life size is also here. Should he sit at the front? The composer of life size?
Where is he?
He's right here with the glasses.
Yeah. Hi, Albert.
Hi, everyone. We're just going to get started with the question and answer right now. I'd like to introduce Rex Miller, the director of the film. And Michaela Angela Davis, who is a writer of Black and gender topics as well as a stylist. So they're just going to get started. If anybody has a question.
And introduce Albert.
And Albert Behar, where are you? He's the composer for Brittany Griner Life Size. We just wanted to recognize him. So we'll just get started. If anyone has a question,
Should we do our discussion first and then do Q&A?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
go for
but
it. Okay.
I'm only going to ask him a couple questions because it's really, we really want to have a robust Q&A, but we want to set a little context, right? Happy Black History Month, everybody. Well, Herstory Month. It's so beautiful to have this film in Harlem today. Thank you, Rex, for the work, right? Thank you so much. So, why this film? And wait a minute, there's two parts. Why this film? And what is this film really about? In your mind, is it about tennis? Is it about Althea? Is it about racism, sexism? Is it about America? What? Why? And
Yes.
what? Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Really appreciate it. This is like a little homecoming for me. I went to high school like 25 blocks down the road at Trinity. My father grew up about a block from here and then later went to Columbia. I didn't even bother to apply. But so this is as close as I get to, being engaged here on this campus. But I wound up making this film because there's a photograph of my mom and Althea. And they played a match in 1958 at the Marion Cricket Club in Philadelphia. And my mom's Jamaican and she's brown skin, and so that was a club that neither one of them could join, but they got to play the tournament. And my mom was not on Althea's level. She got smoked. She lost 6-0, 6-1. But that was a story that I heard so many times sitting around after tennis. My mom would maybe have a cocktail and, when I played Althea. So that was her big tennis moment. But I never really gave it much thought. And then 5, 6 years ago, I stumbled onto this photo. And that day, I just Googled Althea. And then by the end of the day, I had phoned Art Carrington, who's in the film, and he was just telling me all these stories. And then, like, the next day, I was making this film. And that was, like, 5 or 6 years ago. I think after 5 years, you're not supposed to say how long you've been working on a film. So for me, her story, which started in the cotton fields of South Carolina with her parents as sharecroppers, and then getting the Wimbledon trophy from the Queen of England, to me, that was quite a life journey, and that's kind of what drew me in. And the fact that she was this reluctant civil rights icon, I find that very postmodern, that she didn't see race, or at least she publicly didn't talk about it. She just wanted to compete and be a champion, and those are the things that kind of drew me in. And then, of course, strong woman. I mean, that's a strong woman.
What's so interesting is how, particularly in the beginning of the film, aggressive was an adjective that you heard all the time. But then you also simultaneously heard and saw how elegant she was. So this ability to effortlessly embody both being an aggressive champion and one of the most elegant athletes we've ever seen, that in itself is such a complex and beautiful story that really only a Black woman holds in that way, right? Completely aggressive and completely elegant. And I thought it was pretty badass that she didn't get bullied into unauthentically being a civil rights, spokesperson, right? So I felt that was another thing that was just really authentic about her. Because if you're not really an activist, don't be like, there's nothing more annoying than like a fake activist, right? You know the type, like, oh, I'm gonna represent like in someone else's community, but like, so I think that she was very self-aware. And so I'm not Muhammad Ali, right? She's Althea Gibson completely. And this is my last question, and then we're gonna go to y'all, because you came here for, what did Althea teach you?
Never give up, persistence, do it your own way. I mean, that was her thing. I'm going to do it my own way with a little bit of attitude. Don't tell me what to do. And later in life, I think that's one of the things that led to her isolation. You know, as Art Carrington says, you get further and further away from your roots or your people, and then it snaps, and then you're out on your own. So she was such an individual, and that eventually helped push her away from people.
Okay, so I lied, part two of that question. Looking at life through the lens of a black woman in the 50s, do you look at black women differently now? Like, do you walk the streets of Harlem and see, because you've been immersed in the life of a woman, of a black woman, pre-civil rights, but in the era of, you know, Black Lives Matter, did you learn anything else? Yeah. Like, did you expand?
Yeah, Jeannie Ash helped expand Althea's world for me a little bit when she pointed out that one of the differences between Althea and Arthur. First of all, Althea was doing her thing 10, 15 years before Arthur, right. Late 40s, early 50s, and the civil rights movement, as you all know, was just kind of getting started. But what Jeannie pointed out is that Arthur, growing up in Richmond, was supported around him by the people in the church. He had a community to stand on and help him go out in the world. Then he went to UCLA and represented UCLA, and they were behind him, giving him a platform. Then he was in the U.S. Army and became a lieutenant in the U.S. Army, and he always had those communities around him, and Althea never had that. She was really on her own, and being a black woman in the 40s and 50s trying to do this, to me, that's really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more gangster than a poor black woman champion, right? Like, there's nothing more complex in America at that time. So, thank you for making this film, right? I mean, it's like she came and got you. Althea came and got you and said, make this film.
I had many conversations with Althea at the rough times, and I just had to say, it wasn't just me that made this film. You know, it's really, really hard to make a film like this, especially from the financial standpoint, the funding standpoint, and I just have to thank a few people, and one of them is here tonight, Richard Brown. Please just wave, Anyway, why I mention him, this film was almost entirely funded by people who play and love tennis that I begged and pleaded and cajoled with over 5 years. Can we have a little more? What, you're not done yet? And
does Serena know about this film?
Yes.
Because were you all thinking about Serena when you saw this? Like, first of all, she just killed it. But the fact that, you know, they too are the most unlikely, like, when they enter, because, you know, tennis is still very white, still very elite. Anything that takes that kind of money stays white for a long time, right? And when they first entered the court, they disrupted that aesthetic. You know, really, Althea is much more elegant and kind of, you know, her literal silhouette is much more sort of understood by a Eurocentric aesthetic. And the Williams sisters, because I was struck by that, where he was like, oh, she's built like a dancer, she was long and lean, and I was thinking about Serena's thighs, like, you know, you could pack Althea in one of her thighs, right? And how, had there not been Althea, there would be no Serena, like how they kicked open the door for radical disruption inside of this really classical space. So maybe Serena could kick you some. Did you call the Williams sisters?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
many times.
Well, maybe after they've seen, sometimes people come on after they see, you know.
Yeah, I'd like for them to see it, yeah.
Yeah, because I felt bad. Like, I mean, to really believe that she, was destitute, I felt some kind of way. Like, I wasn't even around, but I felt some kind of way. Like that, we're not supposed to let our champions do that.
And I think tennis is a different game now. They treat their legends, their champions, a little differently now. Like, they're always trotted out. You know, as any tennis players in the room? A few. Yeah, you're always seeing McEnroe. You're always seeing Billie Jean, Chris Evert. They're everywhere. They're now, all the coaches are ex-players.
Yeah.
And back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, that wasn't the case. And she also maybe didn't fit the profile of someone that you want at the corporate outings around pro tennis. I'm not really
And
sure.
now, because of Serena, the purses are the same. Like, that's the interesting thing also about tennis, is that it had the same amount of advertisers, the same amount of money for women and men for a long time. Unlike, the film we saw before, the WNBA and the NBA are so very different in terms of the money. But tennis was the same amount of money, meaning the same amount of people watch and the same amount of advertising money. That's why there was so much activism about women getting paid equally.
And they finally have, but
Finally.
they weren't at first.
Took a long time.
Yeah,
Took
a
until the
while.
Williams sister. So there's volunteers with mics and in T-shirts, right? So
Or just stand up and yell. We'll repeat the question, yeah.
do you want to feel? Well, so we'll go either side of the room, okay? So we'll start here.
What were some of the pitfalls you came upon trying to make this film, and what is your tenet purpose after this film?
Okay. What were the pitfalls and challenges of making this film, and what was my intended purpose? Well, I can say I was asked that right at the beginning. What do you want people to take away when they leave the film? And right away I just said I want people to say, I never knew. That was it, because she's not known, and then all the little details of her life are not known very broadly. And then pitfalls and challenges, try to make a film about somebody when there's absolutely zero material until they're like 23 years old or something, So that was one of the challenges, coming up with a way to visually illustrate this story without showing an endless array of talking heads, which creatively I frown upon. I don't like to look at talking heads in documentaries. So, we did reenactment stuff with tennis. And there's a couple of shots where it's actually me hitting the ball, close up of the racket. And then the fun of it for me was finding all this archival material. And we found there's some amazing material. There's some Gordon Parks photos in there. And I stumbled onto this, 7 or 8 low-res images on the internet that he took out at, what's the club in New Jersey? Black Tennis Club in New Jersey. What was it? Sorry? No, not Orange. I forget. Anyway, Gordon Parks spent a couple days out there, and we were working with an archival researcher who, for like a year and a half, she was like, Rex, I'm going to find those photos. I'm going to find those photos, because they were really low res. And then Getty Images, she found it in a basement in a box in an archive that Getty Images owned but didn't even know they had. And it was 300 images of Gordon Parks photographing black tennis players in the late 40s. And then there was a couple of other photographers whose work we uncovered to illustrate, like Harlem. And then this other photographer had 18 rolls of film of Althea. So many of those shots that were when she was about, 29, 30 years old were from that photographer. So that was the challenges, and then kind of the fun for me, since I'm a photographer, was going through bins of things.
So some of these no one has ever seen before.
Yes.
Awesome.
Oh, can I just introduce that man? That's George Henry. He goes way back with Althea in African-American tennis, and he actually was one of the pallbearers at Althea's funeral. So I can't wait to hear what George says.
Hello. I just wanted to congratulate you on what I just saw. I mean, I'm really impressed. It was like just bringing back memories and seeing history, and I think it was long overdue. Why do you think it took so long for this to happen? Not from you, but anybody.
Well, you all tell me. Well, the response I always get is, who's that? who's Althea Gibson? I'm even pitching it now to get it to like this place or that place, and nobody knows who she is, Rex. I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
But you know, my friend did the Free Angela film, and everybody knew who Angela Davis was, and it took her so long. It's like, who wants to see that? So often the lives of, you know, black women aren't what people are, you know, in Hollywood are running to invest in, particularly if they're not really well known. So if it's hard to get a doc about Angela Davis, whom everyone knows as a T-shirt, imagine Althea.
That's it. She's deceased. She's a female. She's African American. Those are all strikes in the media world. That's just my opinion about shining a light on a subject. Thank you. Did we get it right? Did we get it right? All right. Thank you.
So I'm dying to know, what's the distribution plan? 'Cause I remember my parents talking about her.
Yeah.
Father's still alive, he's 93. But I didn't know, you know, and I'm thinking, you know, she's successful, but did he go to Sundance? Did he go to, you know, places, Cannes? Where else did he go? Is there a chance for it to go there? You know, it needs to blow up in my eyes.
Well, we're working on that. So we had, thank you. We had the world premiere was in New York in November at Doc NYC, and then we're just getting into festivals kind of left and right at this point. So it's playing at probably, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 more festivals, and then this isn't public, so please don't tweet about it or anything, but it's getting acquired by American Masters, which is a series on PBS, which, so. And I have to thank our ace producer, Nancy Bursky, who's not here, but she massaged that relationship for like 6 months and beat the door down, and they finally took it. And then I actually just met the head of American Masters today for the first time. I talked to him on the phone once before. So we're looking to broadcast in the summer, maybe July, maybe August, and then trying to get some marketing money to do more independent stuff. And a lot of ideas. I mean, I'll just throw this out there. I've been talking to the folks at Forest Hills. They said, why don't you, well, we thought we would, and one of them is here tonight. Hey, B. We were talking about doing a tribute concert to Althea in the stadium at Forest Hills, because they've renovated it and they're doing big concerts. So my idea is to get all these great hip-hop artists and jazz artists to just play music and then just show a little bit of clips or whatever, but to bring some notoriety to her. But we need some marketing dollars for that. So that's what I do. You know, I get my producer hat on and beg for money.
Common is a tennis fan.
Oh, is he? He's on our list.
Well, you know, vicariously.
One of the things that I really appreciate about the film that I think you did beautifully is, you know, it's about a sort of a superstar, athlete, celebrity, but two relationships, the one with Angie and with her husband, were so touching, and that was just great. It kind of filled out the picture of her as a human being.
Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.
Piggybacking on that, you've got a lot of sources. You've got Angie and some other people around her life, but I am assuming that you got a lot of recordings that you didn't show in this documentary.
Oh, yeah.
So I was wondering, what that you hadn't left out, but you would like to put maybe those secrets that never get in the light in this documentary?
Yeah. Well, I'll throw this one out there. So one of the issues that comes up is, you know, Althea's sexuality. Like, was she or wasn't she? And so we actually had some people commenting on that who knew her, and then Billie Jean made a great comment about it. And so the film, we thought the story goes really nicely in this story, and then we had this like left turn that kind of asks this question and doesn't really answer it, but it's dramatic and it's somewhat sensational, and then we come right back onto this nice path. And then festival organizers and some broadcasters were like, oh, you got to have that in there because it's such a hot button issue, and this film, Case Against 8, was so big last year that you could get such a big audience if you just touch on that. But I didn't think we really had it in a way that presented it. And then the line that is not in there that I love is Art Carrington saying that this is something that quietly traveled behind her, the perception that she was. And it's a poignant statement, but I didn't feel it was developed enough. That we're gonna, and then, so to me, it didn't matter whether she was or she wasn't.
Was she gay? What was it, that she was gay or that she had fluid sexuality?
Well, the perception at that time amongst maybe the powers that be in the tennis and commercial world is that she was a lesbian. But there's no one that was gonna like out her on camera, really. Although it's discussed, but he kind of beats around the bush. He was making the point, I don't know how you can make a film about Althea Gibson and not talk about that. So we still may talk about that for the PBS version by having somebody else comment. But to me, it's not important to me whether she was or she wasn't. It's that the perception was among certain people that wanted to put her out of the mainstream. So I think that's relevant and worth going into. Yep.
I'd like to offer to you that it's very important. And who she was in all aspects of her life are emblematic of that time and of her history and her future significance. Mm-hmm. I also want to suggest that I think it's important to portray to the most accurate degree possible, and I think I hear that's what you're trying to achieve. We certainly don't want to put a label or a name on her, but if there are stories or accounts where people can represent as accurately as possible her experience in the world across her sexual identity, I think that that's an important piece to include in the film.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think for me it was about being accurate, and I didn't feel filmically that we like had it.
But the love story between those two women, I felt was very accurate. I felt lots of love and genuine, and you had photographs and like, so also, you know, having this be the story that you told is the story that you're telling, right? So there's always, you know, particularly when you bring up a complex life, there's always going to be folks that want to hear the part that is going to help tell their story. And I think, you know, and I'm, you know, I just did it when I sat down. It's like, it's an idea, she's, you know, she's black, she's complex, she's poor, she's on the margins, like, but, you know, it could have just been a film about a great, you know, play or two. That's what's so great about Layered Lives, is that everyone can find some interesting story. And question, do you plan to show this in more schools? Like, yes, I feel as a young woman, anywhere, this is such an inspiring story. She's gangster. Like, there's this, like that, like girl, you know, that whole like a girl, like that is like the poster, you know, person who play that whole like a girl thing. Like, it's
one of the first things that we want to do with the music is like, I feel like what you said, she's very gangster. I mean, I want to bring this film to young people, and that's why we put all this hip hop oriented music in it and tried to frame her in this way and want to present her to young people that she's a role model for now.
She's badass whether there was jazz or, you know, or like bluegrass or what. I mean, there's nothing, once you told the story, so, and your use of photography is beautiful. And the way that you filmed the using stills, I mean, you made those stills really come alive. But I don't know if there's any way not to go away from this film not feeling like Althea Gibson is badass. And often when women's history is presented, it's like very delicate, or even Harriet Tubman is presented to us like some magical mammy, right? Like that she didn't tote a gun, that she wasn't a spy, that she was. If Harriet Tubman was a man, she would be like on Mount Rushmore, you know. And so the fact that you're telling, and particularly from a man's lens, you let her be badass. I thought so. Did y'all feel like she was badass in that film? So thank you for that. And I think young people get authentic badassness.
Well, Lenny Simpson, who's in the film, he lives down in Wilmington where Althea lived for a while, and I actually lived in Wilmington for a while. I now live in Durham. But he's shown it to like 10 schools already. I sent him it wasn't even finished yet, and I sent him a copy to watch, and then he's like, Rex, I just showed it to 8 schools last week. I'm like, Lenny, the film's not done. So now he has an updated version. He's got like 6 school screenings set up. So he's just kind of doing that on his own. But we're hoping to get some marketing, outreach money from all kinds of sources to go do that. You know. Any other quick questions? I think we're going to, Steve Berliner, tennis player. You know, I tried so hard to track down what I was told was a distant cousin, and then a nephew, or this, and I had a phone number for somebody in Virginia and South Carolina. I never got anybody, and then somebody told me that her estate was in dispute between some family members and then the executor, and I just wanted to stay away from that. But I haven't found any family members. She did, but from what I was told, they came later, and so she was pretty much brought up on her own with her parents, and that there were some later siblings, but that they're not, you know, in New York first, and then they just weren't involved in her life. But that's just what I found out. But I was scouring the airwaves for anybody who knew her, and especially family, but just never found them. Yeah, well, you saw a little bit about her and her father, but I think that from what my takeaway was that she gained the respect of her father. He was tough, you know, he was Southern, he was old school, and, you know, she was a truant. She didn't go to school, as is pointed out, from like age 12 to 18, and so she had these conflicts with her father. He'd beat her up, but in her autobiography, she says that every beating that her dad gave her, she deserved. That was what she said. So again, it was a different time. Oh, going to the reception.
Okay, so I want to thank them for giving their time.
Thank you all.
Everybody. We have some food and some wine and some drink right over there to your left. And you walk out the door, there's a bunch of people in there, some filmmakers that you can mix and mingle with. Thank you so much for being here. We got films all weekend long.